Hi, everybody, and welcome to our hopefully planned last virtual lecture for our coaching pedagogy class. Thank you once again for your flexibility with me and the other school commitments that I have that are taking me away from the classroom. I'd much rather be in front of the classroom, but I am looking forward to being back there full time starting next week. So this lecture is in place of our Friday class on Friday, January 23rd. We will be talking about coaching styles. So let's get into it. As you consider for yourself, if you want to be a coach in your future, whether that's very part time, working with youth, maybe working with your own kids someday when you become a parent, working at the high school level, perhaps working at the college level, the professional level, working with athletes in a non team sport role, we want to set the stage with some coaching theories. So, some guiding principles for thinking about coaching, then some coaching styles as well. So we'll cover coaching theories, coaching styles. I will talk to you about the reflection questions that you have to answer so that you can get your participation points for today. And then we do have a lot of assignments coming your way, so stay tuned to the end so that you understand what is due for you on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Coaching is really a form of leadership. It can look a lot of different ways. Leaders of companies, leaders of families, leaders of educational institutions all lead based on their personality characteristics, the environment that they're in, and a combination of what their followers really need. I'm going to introduce to you two different coaching theories or theories of leadership. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. If you were to take a psychology class, especially a leadership psychology class, you would probably be introduced to even more ideas of leadership and what it means to be a leader. But we're going to take a look at these through the lens of athletic coaching just for today's class. So one of the foundational or fundamental coaching theories that has been in operation in our sports atmospheres is the multidimensional model of leadership. This is from Chelladurai 1978, so it's been around for a while and can be applicable to many different scenarios, but for us when we're talking about coaching, the core idea here is that to be an effective coach, and I'm swapping the word coach and leader for each other, but to be an effective coach, it's going to depend on a fit between the required behavior, the preferred behavior, and the actual behavior. So write down that middle column in the middle there, the required behavior. What are the norms of the sport? What are the demands of the sport? The preferred behavior. What do the athletes need? What are their personalities? And then the actual behavior. What does the coach actually really do? So if the required behavior, preferred behavior, and actual behavior can work together and are all in a symbiotic relationship, then you're going to see performance be high and satisfaction be high. So in actual behavior, the actual result of the required behaviors and preferred behaviors is the same. Performance is going to be high, satisfaction is going to be high. And vice versa, if it is low, the consequence is also going to be low performance and low satisfaction. So some key concepts here is that this is not a one-size-fits-all coaching style. As you can see on the far left, there are antecedents or things that come first. Situational characteristics. We might be talking about a seventh grade girls volleyball team. We might be talking about a NBA or WNBA basketball team. Those situational characteristics are going to be very different. The characteristics that the leader brings. Are they outspoken? Are they more quiet? Are they aggressive? Those characteristics are going to then feed into the behaviors that they get from their players. And then the member characteristics as well. What makes up parts of a team? If you've taken the sports psychology class, we've talked about team dynamics and team cohesion and how it is not beneficial to have everybody be exactly the same personality type and everybody be exactly the same characteristics. But members are going to bring many different characteristics, and that's a lot to juggle. So, age, culture, gender, sport type, the level of competition, all of those different contexts are going to matter when we're looking at a multidimensional model of leadership. Many, many things go into that. But you're going to get the best results, the best performance if the actual behavior of the team members matches up with what's required by the sport and what's preferred by those team members or athletes. Another theory that works well for coaching is the self-determination theory. This is introduced in 1985 by DC and Ryan, and I actually used a lot of DC and Ryan's sports psychology research when I wrote my master's thesis. So this is near and dear to my heart with the idea of why people compete and why they want to strive to be the best they can. So the core idea here is that athletes' motivation is really driven by three different basic psychological needs: the need for autonomy, the need for competence, and the need for relatedness. In this class, we're talking about this in a coaching or a sports context, but this could be a larger topic when we're talking about physical activity behaviors in general, or any type of behavior change in general, or why people do things that they do, because they're seeking out autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So autonomy, the idea behind that is you feel like you have a choice and you have some ownership. Competence, you want to feel capable and improving. So you want to feel like you have capabilities to be able to perform something. And then relatedness, you feel valued and you feel connected. So this theory says that all humans seek out autonomy, competence, and relatedness in their situations, in their lives, to fulfill these basic human needs. And we can take a look at that again in a sports context. Why do people play a certain sport? They want to feel like they have control and ownership of something. They want to feel capable. So if they are playing tennis and they want to feel like they've mastered the sport of tennis, mastered the physical demands, the strategy behind it, and then they want to feel like they belong, that they're in a social community with others. So having using self-determination as a theory for sports participation really can help with intrinsic motivation, greater persistence, or more likely to stick with things, and better mental health outcomes as well when we take a look at self-determination theory and the reasons why people participate. All right, I've set the stage with two theories, and again, those are not the only two by any means. Those are just two that seem to make sense in a lot of different sports contexts, whether we're looking at beginner all the way up to pro athletes. So the theories are the bottom of our pyramid, or the base to set us up with the foundation. Now I'm going to introduce some different coaching styles. I'm going to talk about 5 of them. Again, this is not an exhaustive list either. There are more than 5 different types of coaching styles, but as I go through them, I encourage you to think about, oh my gosh, do I know somebody who coaches like this? Did I have a coach that coached like this, for better or for worse? So can you think of an example for each style of coaching? And then your reflection question for today will be about this type of coaching style that you prefer. Like, how do you want to be coached, or how were you coached previously, and did you like it or not like it? And then what if somebody hired you to be a coach tomorrow? What kind of coaching style do you think that you'd bring to your sport? So let's dive in and take a look at these 5 different styles. See what I did there? Dive in. I like to use lots of sports metaphors. All right. Number 1 is autocratic coaching, or directive coaching. This is where the coach makes all the decisions. There's a clear structure, there's strict expectations, there's very limited athlete input. The coach is not asking for opinions. They're pretty much just telling it like it is and saying, this is my way or the highway. So this will work best when you're in a high pressure situation. Maybe there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, or it is the last second of a game and the score is tied and many players have different opinions about how they should approach it. Having an autocratic coach in that time and place who just says, this is what we're going to do, kind of takes the emotional load off of having to make those decisions. So that works best in high pressure situations. It also can work with inexperienced athletes who don't yet know the game and can feel overwhelmed. Just having somebody tell them what to do can be successful. If you have a short preparation window, maybe there's not a lot of time to prepare, not a lot of time to share all the details. It's just, we have to get this done. Don't ask questions. That would be a time for autocratic coaching. However, that doesn't work for everybody. Some cons, as you can see here on the slide: low morale. Team isn't invested. They don't feel like their opinions can be heard. People might leave. There might be high turnover. Creativity might be stifled. They just feel like there's not an opportunity at all for them to share anything. So that can definitely be a turnoff for people who don't like operating under a little bit more freedom. Picture on the right-hand side is Vince Lombardi, somebody who my Google search told me was known as an autocratic coach and worked for some people. He was successful, but not for everybody. So maybe you can think about somebody in your life or an experience that you had with an autocratic coach, where it's a my way or the highway situation, no questions asked, the coach makes all the decisions. On the flip side of autocratic coaching is democratic coaching, or athlete-centered coaching. This is where athletes are involved in the decision-making process, and there's really emphasis on communication and shared leadership. Democratic coaching works best when we have experienced athletes, so athletes who can give their voice, share their opinions, make decisions in high-pressure situations. And team culture is really a priority with democratic coaching. So building up the team to feel like they are one unit who's operating together would be a goal of democratic coaching. Creativity is encouraged. The leader does have the final say, but the group is really encouraged to give their ideas so they feel like they're bought into the idea of things. A real life example here on the right side would be Phil Jackson from the NBA and Michael Jordan, and he really focused on player leadership, mindfulness, and group buy-in, especially with his elite athletes for pro basketball. So a benefit of democratic coaching is that it would increase ownership and motivation. The team really feels like it's their team and they can drive the bus, or at least get the bus in motion. However, on the flip side, when you have that many people maybe wanting to share their opinions, decision making might be slower, right? Because somebody's not just deciding. The coach isn't just deciding the one thing to do. The team is having much more input, so it could take a longer time to come to a solution. So, do you have a democratic coach in your life? Or do you feel like maybe if you were going to step into a coaching role tomorrow, you'd be able to be democratic right away? Or is that something that you think might take a little work for you to release some of the ownership, let go of the reins a little bit, and let the team have a little bit more control? We've got transformational coaching as a next coaching style or coaching philosophy. This really focuses on inspiring athletes beyond their performance. It's going to emphasize things like values, personal growth, and vision. So some key behaviors for our transformational coaching style would be individualized consideration. So who does each person on the team, what strengths do they bring? How do they fit into the puzzle? How do I need to talk to them differently? How do I treat them the way that best motivates them? So really individual consideration. Inspirational motivation. You might say, well, Jen, isn't all motivation inspirational? Nah, people can be motivated to avoid punishments. So if you had a coach who yelled and made you run stairs, that even though that is negative, that was still motivating for you to do your best because you didn't want to have the consequence. So for transformational coaching, it would be inspirational motivation, not necessarily punishment or motivation to avoid failure. And then role modeling. So a real life example here on our right hand side is Jill Ellis. She's a former Team USA women's soccer coach and really demonstrated and modeled a lot of transformational coaching in her life. She prioritized character, effort, life skills. She prioritized winning too, of course. They had awesome opportunities and outcomes, but really prioritizing the character and the effort and the sportsmanship that goes along with it. Transformational coaching can really build a strong culture and have a long-term impact. but it certainly takes emotional energy and consistency. So think to yourself, has there been somebody in my life who was really transformational in coaching? Not only just the wins and losses, but really cared for the athletes as a whole being and fostered those life skills above and beyond the sport? And how much emotional energy and emotional intelligence does that take? And do you have that in you? On the flip side of transformational coaching is transactional coaching. So this is everything that is the opposite of transformational. This is performance based. The rewards and consequences come from winning and losing. There are clear expectations and accountability, right? If you do this, then this. If you don't do this, then here's the consequence. So it's kind of cut and dry, no questions asked. However, there's not a lot of emotion and love and external support within it. It's very, very task and goal oriented, not necessarily focusing on individual growth. So some of the ways that transactional coaching gets used is playing time, right? People who it's just straight up the best athletes are always going to play. There's not a goal or motivation to have other people learn from their mistakes and try to get better, but playing time is a common tool. Praise or criticism. So praising the good things, criticizing the bad things, that's pretty transactional. And then using performance metrics. So always looking for improvements and using improvements to measure success. But even if somebody doesn't improve, then that's seen as a failure. On the right-hand side here, real life example, Bill Belichick from the New England Patriots, football coach, kind of has a do your job philosophy. He has clear consequences. If you don't execute on your job, you know what those consequences are going to be. So there are some pros to transactional coaching: clear structure, accountability, what you see is what you get, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. But the cons are really fosters extrinsic motivation. People are striving because they're motivated for things outside themselves, not because of the love of the game or because they want to improve, but because they only want to win or they don't want to lose. So that might be their motivations. And those motivations might be really short-termed. So some of the transactional coaching components: short-term compliance. Again, people aren't sticking around for a while because it's hard to stay motivated in a situation where even if you're trying your best, but you're not reaching the outcome, that's not good enough. Limited personal development. It's very structured and hierarchical. So think to yourself, did you have a transactional coach in your life? Or do you think that would be the way you might operate if you were going to start coaching a team tomorrow? Our final coaching style for today is the laissez-faire coaching or hands-off coaching. It's the coach who's like, hey, I trust you. You've put the work in. I'm not going to give you a lot of instructions. Let's go for it. So these coaches are doing minimal direct instruction. The athletes are largely self-directing. They might give some feedback themselves, but they are not necessarily involved in the planning process, and they're very hands-off. Laissez-faire coaching is going to work best when the athletes are highly experienced and really highly self-motivated. So we're talking about elite athletes who also have a really good grasp or understanding on their sport. This might not be a primary style of coaching. Most coaches are going to operate under more than one style, right? They're not always going to be transformational or always be democratic or always be autocratic. You're not going to see somebody only be a laissez-faire coach the whole time. But this will certainly be seen in veteran professional teams where leaders really emerge within the group so the coach can let the team do their thing. Some pros of the hands-off coaching style is that it encourages independence, allows people to make their own decisions. However, there can be some cons. People could be confused if they are unaware of what their coach has for expectations for them. And there could be low accountability if it's overused. So if you have a coach who doesn't say anything if you don't come to practice 5 days in a row, and if you're slacking off and they aren't encouraging you to try to be better, that could be confusing for you. Or you might say, well, gosh, this coach doesn't care, so why should I care if they don't care, right? So you'd have to be careful with this type of coaching, but it certainly could work in a high performance veteran group of people where the leaders are very self-motivated and know the ins and outs of their sport. An example here on the right-hand side is Greg Jackson, an MMA coach who's known for letting his guys fight and stepping in when necessary, but really focusing on a hands-off coaching style. I've introduced to you 5 different coaching styles or coaching philosophies. Again, that is not an exhaustive list. There are other types of coaching styles out there, and maybe you can think of somebody in your life who demonstrated one or more of those coaching styles. But when you think about all of those coaching styles, none of them exist only in a vacuum. So the most effective coaching or coaches are going to blend different styles based on their environment, based on their group, based on the cohesion of their group, based on their age and the maturity, based on the team culture, based on the situational demands. So you'd be setting yourself up for failure as a coach if you say, I'm always going to be democratic or I'm always going to be hands-off, because there might come a situation where you need to make a quick decision or your team isn't confident and they're looking for you for leadership. And if you say, hey, I'm letting you guys lead yourselves, that might turn into a disaster. So know that the best coaches, the most effective coaches, are going to blend styles, not just focus on one style. And anytime we're focusing on making sure that we are coaching in an ethical and sustainable way, we want to focus on motivation, well-being, and development. So not just the wins and the losses, but the holistic development of our athlete as well. I hope you were able to put faces and names to some of the different coaching styles. You know, when I was in high school, I mean, we had one track coach and one volleyball coach, and you got who you got, and you never questioned their coaching style or you never thought anything of their coaching style. But now that I reflect on some of my previous coaches, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That was their attitude or their personality or the way that they treated the team. It's interesting to put them into these different buckets of the different types of coaching styles. So hopefully you are able to do that with previous coaching experiences that you've had as well when you were the participant. So now I'm going to ask you to reflect on some of those things. You can find the video lecture reflection assignment, so many words, in week 2. So if you open up the week 2 folder or module under KHS 479, you will see the video lecture reflection. I have it here highlighted in blue. You have until Sunday night to do that. And the questions that I'm asking for you are down below here. So when you complete this, you will get 5 points, and those 5 points will count as your participation points or your attendance points for our Friday class. So the 2 questions in this reflection are, what type of coaching style did you or do you or would you prefer for your sport or activity? So you can think about the sport you're currently in, if you're in one, if you've been in one in the past. Maybe your sport is not a typical team sport like basketball or football or baseball or soccer or hockey or swimming, but maybe it is martial arts or powerlifting or a recreational activity that you've been in where you've had a coach. So what type of coaching style did you prefer? Do you prefer right now, or would you prefer if you're going to start up a new sport in the future? And again, maybe it's one that's not listed, but give me a few sentences on what type of style you gravitate toward most and why. And then if you were to start coaching a team tomorrow, so if you got hired to coach 8th grade boys basketball tomorrow, what kind of style do you think you'd gravitate toward and why? All right, we've got just a couple more slides here talking about the assignments that are coming up over the weekend, so stay tuned. In addition to the video reflection, we have 2 assignments that are getting turned in. One of them is going to be a written assignment. Well, they're both going to be written assignments, but one is going to be the assignment itself, and the other one is going to be an outline of what you're going to present next week for our first day of practice meetings, our first team meetings, which I'm very excited to see all of you demonstrate in front of class. So let's go through the day 1 checklist first. You are going to choose a sport in which you're the head coach. So I want you to indicate what is that sport and what is that level. So for me, I would say track and field at the Division III college level. So your sport might be bowling and it's a club team, or it might be t-ball and it is preschoolers. So choose a sport in which you're going to be the head coach. Then you are going to list in your chosen order the priority of things that you would want to do when you first get hired. So the athletic director gives you the key to your office, or however you get started your first day. I want you to think about the different components. You've got team selection, you've got budget, you've got facilities, you've got communication, you've got social media, you've got practice schedules. What are you going to prioritize? There is not a right or wrong answer at all. I want you to reflect on the different components of coaching. Those are listed in the assignment. I just have a little snapshot here that doesn't have all of them listed. And then indicate why you chose that order and then what needs to be done. There was also an example from a former student about what he would do his first day on the job, kind of the order of priorities he would tackle those tasks. So I've listed some tasks. You could add more to that. Some of those tasks you might be like, I'm not going to get to that on day one. That would come later. But I'm wanting you to prioritize the order of, okay, if somebody gives me the key to my office, what do I start with? Am I introducing myself to the rest of the athletic department? Maybe if you're a junior high coach, you're going to be hitting the ground running, finding out what kind of equipment you have at your disposal. If you're a college coach, maybe you're finding out how many students are on your roster and if anybody's transferring in or transferring out. So a lot of different kind of mix and match ideas about what would be priorities for day number one. Again, there's no right or wrong answers here. I want you to think through what would you prioritize with using your time for your first day as a coach. So that will be in written form. You can just do a bullet point list if you want to, but take a look at the example from our former student to see he was pretty detailed in the reasons that he would do the things that he did. So that is due Sunday night. And then assignment number 2 coming up. As was mentioned in class on Wednesday, this next week we will be doing first team meetings. You will be doing these in class. We have 19 students in class. We only have 50 minutes for class, and we don't need to. I want to get through all of them in a timely manner, but I also want all of you to be able to present in front of class, because one of the things you do as a new coach is a first team meeting. I remember planning my first team meeting for my high school track team, and I had so much stuff to talk about, and I lost them after like 20 minutes. They were squirrely and not ready to listen anymore. So you're giving a pretty condensed version of this. You are going to talk for 7 minutes maximum. Obviously, I know a real team meeting would probably be an hour long, if not longer, but you're just going to do the very, very high level highlights for things that you'd want to communicate to your team. So thinking about the skills that we talked about on Wednesday, what are some of the skills that you are bringing to coaching, or thinking about your coaching philosophy or your potential coaching style, how would you set the stage? How would you set the expectations for your first meeting? So you'll be doing a couple of things. You're going to create a document that follows the outline of the assignment. There's 3 different components that you're taking a look at. Team expectations, team rules, team parent involvement, and what that does or does not look like. So you'll turn in an outline, and then you will present from that outline in front of class. So you can bring notes with you, or you can bring that outline with you. You do not need to make a whole slideshow. That's going to take too long. I just want you to talk to the people in class like you're talking to a team, and you'll cover the topics that are covered within the first team meeting assignment. So submit a handout, but then from that handout, you'll present that in class as well. So really focus on knowing your material, delivering it in a professional and confident manner, and then leaving, a minute for some questions of your quote unquote athletes. So again, don't need to make a slideshow, don't need to make this formal by any means, but think through what would be the top 3 things that I want to communicate to my team about our team expectations. Are you going to have tryouts? Are you not going to have tryouts? When's practice going to be? How are you going to communicate with the team? How should they communicate with each other? Are you going to have are you going to have a zero tolerance policy for drugs and alcohol? How are parents going to be involved? How are you going to communicate with parents? What happens if somebody doesn't come to practice? All of those things that you would need to communicate to everybody to have them be on the same page. So you need to be ready to possibly present Monday or Wednesday or Friday. I'm just going to draw names out of a hat. I know that might feel scary and intimidating, but when you are a coach, you never know when you're going to be on the spot and be called to talk in front of people. So I want you to have a little bit of nervous excitement as you prepare for talking to your team for the first time. And that is all I have for you today. So I will see you again next Monday, January 26th, and then all 3 days of next week we'll be doing team meetings. If you have any questions between now and when I see you in class on Monday, don't hesitate to email me. However, if you are watching this video lecture at 11 o'clock on Sunday night, do not email me because I will be sleeping and it will be faster for you to just talk to me in class on Monday. But if you do watch this on Thursday or Friday or even Saturday, I'd be able to connect with you and give you some feedback if you have questions about our assignments. I know that this class moves quickly because it's only half a semester and you've got a lot of assignments to do, so I want to make sure that you don't miss any of them. All right, have a good weekend. We'll see you back in class on Monday.